Okay, just devoured this section, and wow, the sheer detail in the societal restructuring is staggering. Forget simple survival, this is full-blown civilization design. The way the protagonist tackles population growth is genius, linking land, grants and tax breaks directly to having and raising kids is such a clever, long-term play. Then there's the immediate solution, the wildling absorption system. It's ruthless, arguably bordering on indentured servitude. Yet the built-in path to citizenship and the harsh anti-abuse measures make it fascinatingly complex. And that 20-rank meritocracy, the level of thought put into defining status, rewards, and progression is incredible world-building. Watching the Hanyang citizens react to the relocation incentives, seeing self-interest kick in exactly as planned, brilliant manipulation. It feels like every piece is being meticulously placed. On a grand chessboard, how will these radical policies actually play out long-term? Will the wildling system truly integrate people or cause unforeseen problems? Can't wait to find out. Good grief. On the day of the event, thanks to your little schemes, fanned by the flames of various selfish motives, desires, and interests, the quota of 300 households required to move to the new city filled up in a flash. While you were at it, you also handed out a wave of titles. Besides these 300 fresh Gongshi rank holders, quite a few higher titles were distributed as well. Shou Ya, and Xue Tu, those three stalwarts, were promoted straight to the 6th rank Gushan. With a wave of your hand, you ordered them, all off to the front lines. Shou Ya, get yourself to the newly established Ruyang commandery, raise a new army for me, and guard the home base. Shou Ya, you're a trusted relative, dependable. You'll be parachuted directly into Luyang commandery. That place is a chaotic mix. Without you as a linchpin, it won't work. Same mission. Build a new army. Garrison the area. Xue Tu, he'd been with the Han tribe for 2 years. A man who'd lost his home and family, he had now put down roots again, settled down with a wife, child, and a warm home. His child was almost a year old. He used to be Shou Ya's deputy, but now his wings had hardened. You packed him off to Fuma Pass to be the top military man there. Your old subordinates also benefited from the promotions, with various Zongqi officers rising through the ranks. Cavalry leader Chai Duoduo and shield-bearer leader Hu Mankang were temporarily kept back in Hanyang County to guard the main gate for you. Spearman leader Shi Liu and archer leader Tan Jian received orders to form new armies with the goal of pushing westward, continuing to make waves. Their mission was to establish an outpost and market on the large plain below Tuogu Ridge. Your thinking was quite cunning. Firstly, to expand territory and establish a new county, and secondly, to firmly secure the Xishan salt mine under your control. Safety first, and as for resources, the more the better. Speaking of that place, Shi Liu and Tan Jian knew it well. 3 years ago, when you bought their group of several hundred people as casually as buying cabbages, you had passed through there. Back then, you had even led them in using scarecrows on Tuogu Ridge to bluff the fire tribe. Now, the scarecrows had long since burned away, leaving only a row of bare wooden stakes posing as ancient ruins. With military arrangements settled, technical talent couldn't be neglected either. A large batch of Shanzuo and Jizuo ranks were also awarded. The technical experts in Hanyang City, Cripple who managed the kilns, Big Mouth the metallurgist, Sister Shang from the textile workshop, actually your mother-in-law, Barrel Bro from the woodworking shop, all received the 4th rank Jizuo. Several of their outstanding and valuable apprentices also managed to snag a Shanzuo rank. There was also Chief Shi from the former Snake tribe. With a decisive stroke, you directly granted him the 5th rank Gushu. The reason? Meritorious. Service in contributing medicinal herbs, accumulated to this point. No one objected, though some were green with envy. Of course, these titles weren't free. No sooner had they received them than your new orders arrived. Chief Shi continued to dedicate himself to the tribe's medical advancement, find more useful medicinal herbs. As for whether testing the herbs might poison people, well, high risk, high reward. If you want a title, you have to pay a price, don't you? You felt utterly unfazed, even slightly amused. Over the next few days, the 2,500 households migrating from Ruyang Commandery arrived in a great stream at Hanyang City. But this was just a transit point. After catching their breath, the contingent had to be divided. First, 500 households, about 2,000 people, were separated out. Added to 100 households moving from Hanyang City and another 100 households from the newly incorporated Jian tribe, a total of about 3,000 people were dispatched toward Fuma Pass. Their task: reclaim land, farm, and build a new city. From the remaining 2,000 households, another 1,000, about 4,000 people, were drawn. Combined with another 100 households from the Jian tribe and 100 from Hanyang City, this group totaled around 5,500 people and set off for Ruyang Commandery. They would join the 1,000 or so people from the Danshan and Yu tribes already stationed there, bringing the total to nearly 7,000. There was no choice. The plan for the new city in Ruyang was enormous, with sides a kilometer long, making it almost 6 times larger than Hanyang City. With fewer people, when would it ever be finished? It could take forever, and you couldn't wait that long. Of the 2,500 households from Ruyang Commandery, 1,000 remained. You picked out another 500 households, about 2,500 people, plus 100 households migrating from the Han tribe to follow Jian and Liu to the small plain at the foot of Tuogu Ridge. Their mission: garrison the area, establish a market, and incidentally set up a labor market to entice the surrounding wild tribesmen to join in the construction efforts and build a brighter future together. This new county below Tuogu Ridge, you grandly named Danshan County. Why? It was located in the far west, the terrain was open, and the evening sunset glow, wow, it could dye the nearby Tuogu Ridge red. Thus, the fine-sounding name Danshan, Cinnabar Mountain, and the market naturally became Danshan Market. It sounded so cultured. After all this shuffling, the last 500 households from the 2,500 transferred by Da Shu remained, amounting to over 2,000 people. Stroking your chin, you thought for a moment and decided to split them in two. 1,000 people were sent 30 kilometers southwest of Hanyang City to the former homeland of the Jian tribe. There were several thousand mu of Rami fields there that required harvesting personnel each year. Now that manpower was abundant, you decided to establish a county directly, calling it Matian County, Rami Field County. Simple, crude, and easy to remember. 1,000 people were a bit few to start a county, but you had a plan. In another month, the 4,000-plus people from the 2 northern tribal alliances would arrive. You could then allocate 2,000 more people there, bringing Matian County's starting population, capital, to 3,000, enough to build the city. The final remaining 250 households, about 1,000 people, you assigned back to the east bank of the river. Not back to their old home in Ruyang Commandery, however, but to a location 20 kilometers northeast of the former Black Rat tribe territory. This place had no special resources, but its geographical location was superb. It was practically a crossroads. 3 days east to Ruyang, 3 days west to Hanyang, 3 days southwest to Ruyang, and 3 days northeast through the dark forest to the Babao mountain mine. Right in the middle of all 4 locations, not building a city. Here would be a waste of such an auspicious location. You knew this place. You'd scouted it when selecting the site for the new Ruyang city. Back then, you had already felt Ruyang was too far from Hanyang, over 100 kilometers, taking 6 or 7 days on foot, or 2 or 3 days by forced march. Communication efficiency was too low. You had long wanted to establish a relay station in between, right here. You had surveyed it personally, a gentle slope to the north, with the dark forest above and the Ruyang plain below. Forest, grassland, shrubs, everything was there. Below the slope was open land, originally a small path trampled by wild animals, later widened by carts and horses into a dirt road capable of handling traffic, the main route connecting the 2 commanderies. Several small streams flowed down from the dark forest on the slope. The water wasn't abundant but flowed year-round. Da Shu, who used to live in the forest, had told you this. He knew it like the back of his hand. Building a city here, digging. Canals for water, creating terraced fields on the gentle slopes for corn. Rice was too troublesome on mountain terrain. Being close to the main road downhill, with easy access to firewood from the nearby forest, and raising some rabbits, black-boned, chickens, pigs, and sheep, supporting a few thousand people would be ridiculously easy. It absolutely had to be a county. Considering the county's primary function, your eyes lit up and you named it Sitong County, Four Connections County, signifying its accessibility from all directions. It would provide a resting place for travelers coming and going. The initial population would be this remaining 1,000 people. In a month, similarly, 2,000 people would be drawn from the southward migrating tribal alliances, bringing the total to 3,000 to start construction. A new county also needed someone in charge to keep things in order. You pondered for a moment, and dispatched Human Kang and Chai Duoduo, who had been guarding Hanyang, to Matian County and Sitong County respectively. Each would be responsible for one county, holding both military and administrative power. As for Hanyang City, what need was there for a heavy defense now? A few gatekeepers would suffice. It was protected by Danshan to the west, Matian to the southwest, Fuma Pass to the north, Sitong to the east, and Ruyang Commandery was just a half-hour boat ride south. Enemies wanting to attack Hanyang City. In their dreams. Even if some blind fool managed to sneak through some obscure corner, Hanyang City just needed to close its gates, send messages by eagle calling for reinforcements to perform a counter-encirclement, trap them like dogs in a cage, and converge on the center. With these four guardian outposts, Danshan, Matian, Fuma Pass, Sitong, on the periphery, plus Hanyang City's own high walls and deep moats. Others had rammed earth walls. Yours was the luxury version with an earth core faced with brick. Let the enemy attack freely. They'd end up crying for their mothers. This level of defense in this era was basically unbeatable. For the next month, the second month of spring, the entire Han tribe was engaged in a great migration. Nearly 20,000 people converged on Hanyang City, received supplies, were assigned to groups, and then surged off towards their respective new homes. By mid-second month, most groups had successfully reached their designated new county locations. The timing was perfect. It wasn't too late to plant crops. By hurrying to reclaim land, they could harvest at least 2 crops this year and achieve self-sufficiency. Initial food supplies would be covered by Hanyang and Liuyang commanderies. After 3 or 4 months come summer, they would be eating the fragrant grain they had grown themselves. It was in the late second month of this tense yet hopeful spring that the 2 northern tribal alliances finally arrived. Over 4,000 people, travel-worn, driving yaks, wild donkeys, and a large amount of belongings. However, when they stood before you in Hanyang City, they brought news that made your eyelids start twitching, and a group of terrified tribespeople. Great Son of Heaven! The 2 alliance chiefs looked nervous. They could barely speak coherently. We started south in the spring, and halfway here, we ran into cannibal forces again. A dense, dark mass of over 1,000 men, all males. We couldn't fight them, so we just fled south desperately. Luckily, we have many livestock, and our people are good riders, so we temporarily shook off the pursuers. But we don't know if they'll follow. I think it's most likely they will. A migration of several thousand people, with so many animals. The trail we left behind definitely can't be hidden. Son of Heaven, you must prepare early. Don't wait until the enemy reaches our doorstep. This situation left you a bit stunned. Hadn't you specifically sent Yuyin north to scout last year? His report said he hadn't found any giant ape lairs, nor had he seen any large cannibal forces roaming about. So it turned out he had just skirted the edges of the cannibal territory and returned? Really lucky, or maybe just incompetent. You thought it over carefully. This was indeed somewhat abnormal. For the entire past year, the cannibals hadn't harassed the Han tribe's territory. Was it because they had suffered heavy losses in previous attacks and were scared off? Had they temporarily switched to a defensive strategy, laying low and building strength, not daring to confront you head-on? The more you thought, the more plausible it seemed. Otherwise, why would they, knowing full well of the Han tribe's existence and your possession of ultimate weapons like bows, arrows, and shields, delay coming south and instead go north to raid migrating tribes? Had they degenerated from a fearsome, professional team of conquerors directly into amateur bandits engaged in roadside robbery? However, no matter how much you might inwardly despise them, the necessary precautions couldn't be skipped. You immediately arranged for Eagle messages to be sent to all newly established commanderies and counties. A large cannibal army might be heading south. Everyone must stay alert and prepare defenses. Simultaneously organize patrols to strengthen surveillance of the surrounding areas so you wouldn't be caught off guard. With defensive arrangements made, offensive action couldn't be neglected either. You summoned Xue Ya again, gave him a small cavalry detachment and ordered them to act as scouts. Immediately head north out of Fuma Pass and investigate the cannibals' whereabouts. If possible, your eyes glinted with a hint of cunning. While you're at it, snipe a few of their totem warriors, stir up some trouble for them, and then lure them towards Fuma Pass. At Fuma Pass, although the main county city wasn't finished yet, the two independent walls blocking the gorge entrance had been completed during the winter. Two high walls combined with the steep cliffs on either side naturally formed a perfect earned city, Wengcheng. Now was the perfect time for a live fire exercise. An urn city, as the name implies, is meant to lure them into the urn, right? Trick the enemy inside, then close the gate. And slowly entertain them. This was your initial battle plan. The strategic objective? Inflicting casualties was secondary. The main goal was capture alive as many as possible. Those were prime free labor. Feed them twice a day, give them 2 sets of ragged clothes. No need to pay wages and they could do any dirty, tiring work. Killing them would be such a waste. It was just that capturing them alive was a bit difficult. You rubbed your hands, calculating inwardly. Hopefully you could catch more recruits this time. The Han tribe's enterprise kept growing larger, and there was a shortage of labor everywhere. Xue Ya led a cavalry detachment, whistling as they charged out of the north gate. These scouts would split into several groups for deep reconnaissance. However, their main focus was the trail left by the 2 newly arrived tribal alliances during their southward journey. After all, if the enemy was indeed following close behind, they would most likely follow this path. Back at the main base, in Hanyang City, you weren't idle either. With a decisive command, wagon teams immediately began rumbling towards Fuma Pass, hauling supplies. Planks were piled high like mountains, and weapons were abundant, especially wooden shields, long spears, and entrenching tools. There was no helping it. Those goose quill sabers were valuable and slow to produce. Even with the wind, powered, forging hammers clanging away, there weren't enough skilled blacksmiths. Therefore, the simple, crude entrenching tool, capable of chopping, hacking, and digging pits, became a quick-to-learn divine tool, shenki, often used humorously for useful items, for the raw recruits, especially for those accustomed to swinging stone axes. This tool felt like an old friend. It was easy to pick up with almost no instruction needed. Besides sending equipment, people also had to be sent. With many personnel already dispatched elsewhere, you scanned the newcomers and directly conscripted able-bodied men from the 2 recently joined tribal alliances. All young, strong men were swiftly organized into 2 teams. One team, double-timing it, went to reinforce Fuma Pass. The other team remained in Hanyang City as your reserve force. If the enemy lost their minds and didn't go to Fuma Pass but caused trouble elsewhere, you'd have men ready to deploy immediately. The instructors responsible for the crash course training of these 2 new units were the very soldiers you had earlier sent to those 2 alliances for undercover. A no-for cultural exchange and learning. Having spent over half a year in those tribes, they spoke the local dialects fluently. They understood your orders and could communicate clearly with the new recruits under their command, avoiding the messy situation where the general doesn't know his soldiers and the soldiers don't understand their general. Regarding your arrangements, the leadership of your two new allies cooperated fully, not daring to even squeak, cough. They had absolutely no objections. Your status in their eyes was entirely different. Many tribes from the north deeply believed. The prophecies on the stone tablets convinced you were the chosen one, sent by heaven to lead them in defeating their enemies. While the Han tribe was frantically mobilizing troops and deploying generals, they also had to continue the laborious task of building new cities. Ruyang Commandery, serving as the Great Rear area, also mobilized its entire populace, rolling up their sleeves to focus on farming. Starting this year, the over 7,000 mouths in this commandery had to feed themselves. They couldn't keep relying on Hanyang Commandery for provisions. Here, the clouds of war gathered, and everyone was busy enough to have their feet hitting the backs of their heads. But shift the view southward on the grasslands, near the coast, and the atmosphere was completely different. A scene of peace. Well, an oddly eerie peace. Niu Wei, the newly appointed trade elder of the Xin tribe, had just led his people and goods laboriously across the strait and barely gained a foothold near the grasslands when he was robbed. The robbers were none other than the Snow Wolf tribe, who, having been thoroughly tricked by the previous Xin tribe trade elder last year, had foolishly rushed off to raid your Han tribe caravan. They ended up being beaten black and blue, utterly humiliated, and even lost their loincloths in the process. The Snow Wolf tribe's logic was simple and powerful. Han tribe, we can't beat you right now, but we can't just swallow this insult, so you, Xin tribe, will take the blame. However, they were dumbfounded when this new elder Niu Wei cooperated with incredible smoothness. Without a second word, he raised his hands high and meekly surrendered. The sea salt, cattle, and horses his team carried were all presented as compensation for emotional distress. Not only that, Elder Niu Wei showed none of the airs expected of a high-ranking official from a tribe of tens of thousands. He bowed and scraped, humbly apologizing to the Snow Wolf tribe. Of course, Niu Wei refused to take the blame himself. Shamelessly, he pushed all responsibility onto the former elder, who had already been chopped into meat chunks. With tears in his eyes, he claimed it was all that dead fool's instigation that caused the Snow Wolf tribe's heavy losses. He added that their great chieftain had long disliked the man, had already taken care of him, and had specifically sent Niu Wei to offer apologies. Seeing Niu Wei's attitude, which seemed so sincere it could move heaven and earth, the Snow Wolf tribe felt awkward about resorting to lethal force. After all, you don't hit a smiling face. However, extortion was a must. The Snow Wolf tribe fiercely declared, "From now on, if your Xin tribe wants to pass through here, you must leave." Behind a large amount of gleaming white sea salt is a toll fee each time, or else they'd break their legs. To this, Niu Wei didn't even blink, immediately agreeing wholeheartedly. Niu Wei felt perfectly justified in his cowardice, but the young men under his command, who had followed him hoping to make a fortune, were incensed, especially the dirt poor, lads counting on the elder to lead them to riches. They felt this new leader was far too spineless, but Niu Wei had his own rationale for being cowardly. This matter truly was the fault of that old predecessor who tricked them first. It's not unfair for us to compensate them a little. Besides, don't forget why we came here this time. Niu Wei lowered his voice. We're here to do business, to find a way forward, not to fight to the death with people on the grasslands. This is their territory, a boundless grassland. What can our small group do? We can't beat them, just like they can't attack our home on Bamboo Island. That's our territory. After Niu Wei explained this reasoning of strategic retreat when facing a stronger enemy, many understood. Yet a few hot-blooded youths still felt unconvinced, muttering under their breath, calling him weak-kneed. Niu Wei's ears were sharp, and he added, "What they want is just some salt, that stuff. Our tribe has tons of it by the sea. It's inexhaustible." Is it worth making an unbeatable enemy over something so cheap? With these words, the few hot-blooded youths finally shut up. Right. They couldn't win a fight, and the enemy only wanted some salt they had in abundance. Maybe it really wasn't necessary to make a stand. After all, the tribe would need to migrate along this route in the future. It was a long-term prospect. Compared to that white salt, establishing good relations with the grassland tribes and doing business was the real priority. Thus, after obediently paying tribute once, Niu Wei didn't rush deeper into the grasslands. He led his men back to their temporary base by the sea. Then he swiftly loaded up the second batch of supplies and set off towards the grasslands again, full of vigor and confidence. It turned out the old fox had anticipated the Snow Wolf tribe would cause trouble. Right after landing, he had divided his people and supplies into two groups. One group stayed at the outpost near the reef bridge to guard their main assets, while he led the other group specifically to offer warmth and apologize to the Snow Wolves. This maneuver, being extremely cautious, was indeed a form of wisdom. Now, with supplies replenished, Niu Wei led his mini-trade caravan of only 40 men, trekking along the coastline for nearly a month before finally stepping onto the true inland grasslands. The young men seeing this spectacle for the first time had their jaws nearly hit the floor, too shocked to speak properly. Wow, Elder, this place is huge. You can't see the end. Yeah, Elder. Such a vast grassland you can't even see a mountain. Not a single sign of a tribe either. Where are we supposed to find people to trade with? And that Han tribe, where are we supposed to find them? These lads were all born and raised on Bamboo Island, never having traveled far in their lives, at most wandering to the next village. Leaving the island a few days ago, seeing the boundless ocean and the miraculous reef bridge in the sea had already felt like an eye-opening experience that nearly scared them out of their wits. Now this endless, dazzlingly green grassland, along with the blue sky and white clouds, made them tremble with excitement. Each secretly thought, this trip was worth it. Even if I die out here, it's worth it. I can brag about this for a lifetime. Back home, we are now the most knowledgeable people in the entire tribe. So proud. In contrast, Elder Niu Wei was much calmer, his face impassive. He silently calculated. This was already his 27th trip to the grasslands. By his count, he had been trading on these grasslands for a full 11 years, from being a tag-along junior member initially, to becoming a team leader, and now the distinguished trade elder. Niu Wei could confidently slap his chest and declare, besides the natives of these grasslands, I am the most familiar with this land. What's the panic? Niu Wei calmly gave directions like a seasoned leader. Follow the sun during the day, the stars at night, you won't lose your way. Head towards places with lush water and grass. You can't go wrong, no matter who fights whom. On the grasslands, who becomes the boss? Those good pastures are definitely occupied by tribes. Although they fight each other for territory, they are usually quite courteous to us merchants delivering salt. After all, whose family cooks without salt? As for the locations of those pastures, a glint of pride flashed in Niu Wei's eyes. Over the past decade or so, I've measured them all with my own feet. The footprints of our Xin tribe caravans have covered almost the entire grassland, so don't worry about trading at all. What I'm truly worried about now, Niu Wei's tone shifted, his brow furrowing slightly, is that Han tribe. I wonder if their caravans have arrived. Will we have a chance to meet them? We'll just have to inquire with these nomadic tribes. He sighed. The most troublesome thing is that the Han tribe caravans only appeared in the last couple of years. The natives here probably can't even tell us where the Han tribe is located. It seems we'll have to prepare for a long-term resistance. A long-term search on the grasslands. But one day we will definitely find the Han tribe. Niu Wei clenched his fist, his eyes firm. This so-called expedition to the Han tribe was ostensibly for the tribe's development, to learn skills from them. But this was actually just the official story Niu Wei told the great chieftain. His true intention was more like making a pilgrimage to the Han tribe. Yes, a pilgrimage, towards that legendary, unbelievably powerful Han tribe. He really, really wanted to see it with his own eyes. Just like this group of wide-eyed, excitedly chattering young men around him, even if it was just to take a look, to broaden his horizons. Even if he died out here, it would be worth it. Hearing Elder Niu Wei's words, the admiration the young men in the group felt for their new elder surged like a mighty river, flowing endlessly. Their eyes sparkled, having already elevated Niu Wei to the status of a life idol. In the following days, this idol led his young admirers steadily eastward, because according to legend, there was an enormous lake to the east, respectfully called the Sea of Sunrise by the grassland people, meaning the great sea where the sun is born. After all, the sun slowly climbed up from that direction every day. For primitive people who didn't understand geography, this explanation made perfect sense. On the western shore of the Great Lake, the side closer to the grasslands, many winding rivers and scattered small lakes dotted the landscape. The water and grass were lush, supporting herds of cattle and sheep. Just as Niu Wei had hoped, they successfully found nomadic tribes grazing here. Beside a meandering small river, the scene was lively. Teenage boys on horseback shouted as they chased and hunted grassland wolves. Women, also on horseback, skillfully herded baying sheep and mooing cattle. Men stood guard on the periphery, their gazes vigilant. On both banks of the river, a leisurely scene of pastoral life unfolded. The river wasn't deep. Even at its deepest point, the water only came up to a horse's belly, allowing them to wade across directly on horseback. After encountering patrolling warriors on the outskirts, Niu Wei immediately identified himself as a merchant caravan and, knowing the proper etiquette, presented a small bamboo tube of gleaming white salt as a meeting gift. The warrior was clearly pleased, accepted the gift, and enthusiastically led them across the river to the tribe's camp on the other side. Wading through the splashing water, a large expanse of white felt tents came into view. Niu Wei immediately seized the opportunity for some on-site teaching for his young admirers. Watch carefully. The grassland people have their own customs. When their men reach adulthood, they must build their own new tent, marry, and have children. So, on the grasslands, if you want to know how many adult male laborers a tribe has, don't foolishly ask. Just count how many tents they have. Understood? The young men around him had a sudden realization, their eyes sparkling. Elder is amazing, learned another trick. However, as their group drew closer to the center of the camp, Niu Wei quickly noticed something unusual. For instance, the large tent in the very center, obviously belonging to the chieftain, stood out like a crane among chickens. It wasn't just that the tent was enormous, though a chieftain's tent would certainly be large. What Niu Wei noticed was the material covering the outside of the tent. That stuff wasn't the common felt seen on the grasslands at all, but wool cloth produced by the Han tribe? Niu Wei vaguely remembered hearing from grasslanders that Han tribe wool cloth was quite expensive. Even if other tribes managed to buy some, they treasured it, using it sparingly to make clothes. But this chieftain actually used such precious textiles to cover a tent. The feeling was like the legendary horse Judge Bowl seeing 1,000 Li steed hitched to shafts, straining to pull a broken cart. His heart ached with pity. Such fine cloth, wasted like this, nouveau riche, so utterly crass. Thinking this, we couldn't help the corner of his mouth twitching as he forced a dry laugh. Heh, your esteemed tribe is truly prosperous. To actually use Han tribe wool cloth for a tent. What extravagance, what extravagance. Who knew that the young man leading the way was quite simple-minded, and completely missed the sourness and sarcasm in Niu Wei's words. Instead, with a proud expression that practically screamed, "We're rich and we want to show it off," he took it as a compliment rather than shame. "Hey, guess from afar, this wool cloth tent is nothing." The young man waved his hand dismissively. "This is just a little trinket we traded for from the Han tribe caravan. We have even better things. Treasures that cost us over 10 head of cattle and horses. Look, Right over there. Following the direction the young guide pointed, the gazes of Niu Wei and all his men snapped over. Then, everyone, including the widely traveled Niu Wei, couldn't help their pupils contracting sharply. Not far away, parked conspicuously, were two-wheeled, single-horse harness, Han tribe carriages. This was the first time Niu Wei had ever seen the legendary Han tribe carriage with his own eyes. All previous descriptions of carriages had been second-hand information heard from others. Next, Niu Wei was led into the luxurious wool cloth tent and met the chieftain of this tribe. Most grassland tribes didn't have proper names. They were usually referred to by their chieftain's name, like Zhang San's tribe or Li Si's tribe. This tribe was no exception. Their chieftain was named Modun. The name itself was quite unusual. Moreover, this chieftain was very young. According to hearsay, this tribe had traded with the Xin tribe caravans more than once before, but back then Modun was just a little kid, and the chieftain was from his father's generation. He had only just become chieftain this spring, and the first major thing he did after becoming chieftain was to get himself this nouveau riche gold version of a wool cloth tent. It seemed this young new chieftain particularly enjoyed luxury. This, Kid Modun saying he's tyrannical and inhumane, is no exaggeration. This tyranny isn't just reflected in his furry big tent. Take a peek inside his tent, hey. The iron pot gleams brightly, and the table is perfectly straight. Of course, the Han tribe's merchant caravans wouldn't be full enough to carry a table all the way here for him. That table, to put it bluntly, is just a piece of wooden plank salvaged from a broken-down cart. Prop it up with some stones, spread piece of burlap as a tablecloth, and whoosh, a grassland-style small table is born. The decorations on the table are just tyranny upon tyranny. Leaving aside everything else, just look at those two small daggers with deer antler handles and refined steel blades. Those are special supply goods from within the Han tribe. Yet this kid Modun somehow managed to get his hands on two of them, even if he had to sell everything he owned. And look at the tableware, tisk, even more amazing. Not those crude, thick bowls you usually see on the grasslands. The ones on the table are all painted porcelain with hand-drawn patterns. In this era of extreme cultural and entertainment scarcity, a set of such fancy bowls and dishes is enough to make any bumpkin exclaim, wow. However, all of the above, in Modun's eyes, are just small fry. The treasure he cherishes most is the fist-sized small jar in the middle of the table. Come, try some of this good stuff I got from the Han tribe. Modun enthusiastically invited Niu Wei, wishing he could carve the words local tyrant on his forehead. As soon as he finished speaking, several burly grassland girls, each carrying a large porcelain basin, swayed in. One basin held chunks of mutton cooked until tender. Another held lamb legs roasted until dark red and glistening with oil. And the last held freshly warmed milk, its fragrance filling the air. After the girls had portioned out the meat, Modun then stingily dug out a few pinches of bright red powder from the tightly sealed small jar and sprinkled it onto his own plate. Then he grabbed a fatty piece of mutton, dipped it vigorously into the red powder, and stuffed it into his mouth. Just look at his expression. It was priceless. His eyebrows instantly twisted into a knot, and his face turned red, like a monkey's. Bottom. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he gulped down a few mouthfuls of fresh milk before letting out a long sigh of relief, a look of, satisfying, on his face. Then, with a hint of provocation and smugness, he glanced sideways at Niu Wei, his eyes seeming to say, "You country bumpkin, never seen anything like this before, have you?" Makes you drool with envy. Looking at Modun's daredevil expression, to be honest, Niu Wei felt a bit apprehensive and didn't really want to challenge that eerily red powder. After all, the tastes of the grassland people had always been unconventional, completely different from the rough men from his Zhudao hometown who grew up eating coarse cornmeal. However, the other person was, after all, a tribal leader, extending a warm invitation and even personally testing the poison. Moreover, Modun had vowed that this thing was good stuff obtained from the Han tribe. Finally, driven by politeness and curiosity, Niue still braced himself and extended his courageous paw, and took a bite. The steaming hand grabbed, mutton coated in a layer of bright red chili powder. As soon as it entered his mouth, Niue felt like he had bitten into a red-hot piece of charcoal. His mouth instantly exploded with a fiery and pungent sensation that shot straight to the top of his head. He almost spat it out, but thinking that the host was still watching expectantly, he gritted his teeth and swallowed that flaming mutton. As a result, a miraculous thing happened. This devilish seasoning, he didn't know what it was called, but as he chewed it together with the mutton, it actually became more and more fragrant. The spicy taste did indeed make him grimace, and tears almost came to his eyes. But after the first bite, his hand seemed to be bewitched, uncontrollably reaching for the plate of red chili powder again. Ha 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 ha. How is it, friend? You've also fallen in love with this seasoning, haven't you? Modun looked at Niue's painfully happy expression and couldn't help but burst into laughter, so proud that his nostrils seemed to point to the sky. After finishing the second piece of chili mutton and washing it down with a few mouthfuls of hot milk to put out the fire, Niue finally caught his breath and said with a hissing sound, This seasoning has enough kick. It's strong, but paired with mutton, it really is amazing. Is this stuff sold by the Han tribe? What's it called? They say it's called Lajiaomian, chili powder, Modun said while taking a big bite of meat, acting as if he was popularizing knowledge. It's a fruit that grows on a plant, only one harvest a year, very rare. It also needs to be dried and ground into powder. It's a lot of work. So, it's very expensive. Just this small jar can be exchanged for a sheep. Modun paused, then added, At first I also thought their asking price was too black-hearted. But after trying it once, just like you now, I was completely hooked, hehe. Lajiaomian. Niue repeated the awkward Han pronunciation word by word, already cursing the Han tribe's merchant caravan 1,000 times in his heart. Profiteers. Absolutely profiteers. What a fruit that grows on a plant, one harvest a year, very rare. Bullshit. Even if there's really only one harvest a year, the yield depends on how much land you plant, doesn't it? What rare? It's clearly just an excuse for the Han tribe to inflate prices and make a killing. What's even more infuriating is that when the Han tribe sells this chili powder, they're cunning as foxes, grinding the chilies into powder first, not even willing to leave a single seed behind. This is clearly to prevent this money-making artifact from spreading. Thinking of this, Niue couldn't help but recall the cumin seeds that their previous elder of the merchant group had generously given to the Han tribe. He immediately felt a dull ache in his nether regions. If only they hadn't given them away back then. Maybe their Shin tribe could also be making a fortune by selling cumin, just like the Han tribe selling chili powder. But now, the Han tribe also has cumin. What if, when their Shin tribe also starts selling cumin, those treacherous Han merchants immediately jump out and start selling cumin too, even selling it cheaper than them? Then what the hell would their Shin tribe earn? And the Han tribe could continue selling their chili powder at a high price. This was simply undermining their very foundations, cutting off their source of wealth. However, Niue didn't plan to just slink back like this. This time, he was determined to see the Han tribe, or he wouldn't give up. Chief Modun? Niue changed the subject, tentatively asking, May I ask where you last saw the Han tribe's merchant caravan? Do they come here often? When are they likely to come next? I'm really not sure. Modun frowned, trying hard to recall. According to their previous habits, they should set off in the spring. Counting the days, they should be somewhere in the northernmost part of the grasslands by now, right? They travel slowly, dawdling along the way. If they want to saunter over to our place, it'll probably be at least another month. Niue cursed inwardly. Damn it! This vast grassland was like finding a needle in a haystack. Who knew when they would run into the Han tribe people? Moreover, they couldn't just wander around aimlessly. If they missed the Han tribe people, they'd be truly unlucky. However, as Modun said this, His tone suddenly changed, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. He picked up the shiny, refined steel dagger beside him and flipped it deftly between his fingers. It was obvious that this kid often played with this thing, and his technique was quite skillful. "This knife is a Han tribe knife," Modun said, playing with the dagger, his tone carrying a hint of boastfulness and a touch of longing. "They say this thing is made of steel, incredibly sharp, but it's also troublesome to make. Only their own people have it, and they're unwilling to sell it to other tribes. But I still managed to get these two. This iron knife is really a good thing," Modun praised repeatedly. "It's not only convenient for cutting meat, but also good for cutting people. Just as effective. It's a pity they just won't sell it." Saying this, Modun paused, finally asking the question that had been lingering in his mind for a long time. "Your Shin tribe, can't you also make something similar?" he said, while gently tapping the silver, gleaming bowl on the table with the small dagger in his hand. That was a batch of silverware specially crafted by the Shin tribe back then for doing business on the grasslands, used as public relations gifts to befriend various grassland tribes. It was from who knew how long ago, but this batch of silverware had been circulating on the grasslands ever since, becoming the Shin tribe's golden signboard. Niue didn't answer immediately. He vaguely guessed what Modun wanted to say. Sure enough, Modun then threw out a proposal that made Niue's heart pound. "This kind of iron knife. Can your Shin tribe make it? If your tribe can make it, I, Modun, am willing to trade you cattle and sheep. Moreover, I can also promise to form an alliance with your Shin tribe." Modun's tone was solemn, carrying a hint of unquestionable authority. "As long as you can continuously sell us the iron knives we want, I, Modun, can guarantee you. From now, I will never allow anyone on the grasslands to harm your Shin tribe's merchant caravans. What do you say? Isn't this a worthwhile deal?" Using the safety of the caravan in exchange for weapons was simply a pie in the sky for a nomadic tribe. Like Modun's that couldn't manufacture iron tools themselves. It was a bargain. A huge bargain. Modun was a hedonist. That was true. But in this dog-eat-dog, unreasonable land of the grasslands, wanting to enjoy oneself in peace, without some real strength, your meager possessions would have long been targeted and plundered. If you didn't attack others, they would proactively attack you. This was the law of survival on the grasslands, simple and brutal. Think back to when you had just started firing pottery. Wasn't that bald? Cough that tribe next door so green with envy that they howled and charged over to attack? Same principle. Modun's mental abacus was clicking away furiously. Right now, everyone on the grasslands was starting from a similar point. Whoever could obtain powerful metal weapons from the outside would be able to leap ahead and leave everyone else far behind. However, Niue wasn't stupid. He had his own calculations. "Chief Modun," Niue said with the characteristic sincere smile of a merchant, "we haven't seen Han tribe ironware many times. We don't know much about it, so we can't manufacture it for the time being. However, our Shin tribe does have its own alloy weapons. I wonder if you'd be interested." As he spoke, he swished out a short sword from his waist. The short sword was double-edged and looked quite intimidating. However, the blade was pale gold in color, clearly with many impurities. This was the bronze alloy that the Shin tribe was so proud of. Compared to the gleaming, refined steel short sword in Modun's hand, the size was similar. But the Shin tribe's bronze was a mixture of heavy elements like copper, lead, silver, and tin, making it extremely heavy. For the same size, this bronze short sword was much heavier than Modun's steel knife. Modun took it and hefted it. The feel was okay, heavy and substantial, but as a weapon, it was hard to say how useful it would be. He casually picked up the bronze sword and tried to cut the mutton in the basin. As soon as he tried it, the difference was immediately apparent. Modun frowned. This bronze sword, although said to be sharp, still required several back and forth sawing motions to cut the meat, just like sawing wood, very laborious. Look at the Han tribe's steel knife. Placed on the meat with a little force, a snap, and a large piece of meat came off cleanly. In terms of weight and sharpness alone, the steel knife completely crushed the bronze sword. Modun's heart was filled with disappointment. The small flame that had just been ignited was poof extinguished. He didn't stand on ceremony. Right in front of Xue Ya, he picked up his own steel knife and struck it against the bronze sword's edge. A grating screech sounded. The steel knife cleanly shaved off the bronze sword's edge, curling it into a yellowish-brown bronze ring. Xue Ya watched from the side, his face flushed with shame, wishing he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Humiliating. Too damn humiliating. He knew that their newly developed alloy was inferior to the Han tribe's ironware, but he hadn't expected the gap to be so huge. If this were on the battlefield, and the two weapons clashed, did they even need to guess the outcome? It would definitely be a snap, and the sword would break and the person would die. He thought Modun would completely give up and cancel this metal for safety deal. Unexpectedly, the kid's eyes darted around and he actually asked a question that confused Xue Ya. This yellowish-brown knife is far too inferior to the iron knife, and it's so heavy I doubt it's much good as a weapon, Modun said, playing with the ruined bronze sword, his tone changing. However, can you use this material to make something else? What thing? Xue Ya asked, completely bewildered and curious. It's, what's that thing called? Modun scratched his head, unable to recall the Han word after thinking for a long time. I can't remember. Anyway, it's two semicircular rings like crescent moons that people can put their feet into, Modun said, gesturing wildly with his hands. Xue Ya was completely lost. 2 rings? For putting your feet in. Wasn't this a waste of materials? Mining and smelting this bronze material wasn't easy for their Xin tribe. Using it to make something to step on? Had Modun been kicked in the head by a horse? No wonder Xue Ya couldn't understand. He had never seen stirrups, had never even heard of them. It was ironic, because although he was the first to bring news about the Han tribe back to Zhudao, and had brought back many local specialties of the Han tribe, those things were all second-hand goods he had bought at high prices from grassland. Tribes who had traded with the Han tribe. Even the information about the Han tribe's 4-wheeled ox carts came from this way. As for the Han tribe's caravan members, even a small soldier, Xue Ya hadn't even seen a hair of one. Naturally, he wouldn't know about the epoch-making divine artifact that was the stirrup. But the nomadic tribes on the grasslands were different. Anyone who had dealt with the Han tribe's caravans had basically seen stirrups. Grassland people loved horses as much as their own lives, and their understanding of horse behavior and horsemanship was deeply ingrained. They also liked to adorn their beloved horses. So the first time they saw the peculiar saddles on the backs of the Han tribe's caravan horses, and the 2 iron rings, stirrups, under their feet, they were incredibly curious. This curiosity led to research. After studying it again and again, they quickly discovered the incredible advantages of this set of horse gear. The problem was, with their own technical level, they couldn't manufacture it at all. The most crucial point was that those treacherous Han merchants absolutely refused to sell this thing. This made them anxious and frustrated beyond measure. Grassland. People were born on horseback and grew up on horseback. Before they were even born, their fathers would have already whittled small bows and arrows for them. A little older, they could ride lambs and shoot around with their small bows and arrows. When they grew older, they started riding horses. Calling them a nation on horseback was no exaggeration. Each and every one of them had horsemanship skills as superb as acrobats. But even so, the newly formed rookie heavy cavalry of your Han tribe could beat the veteran cavalry powerhouse, the Snow Wolves, to a pulp in conflicts. The key reason was the overwhelming advantage in horse gear and weaponry. The appearance of the high pommel saddle and stirrups allowed your subordinates, those farmers who had never even touched a horse's mane before, to quickly master the basics of riding. Although their skills were still a bit lacking compared to seasoned grassland riders, their overall combat effectiveness was already on par. As for weapons, the Han tribe's mounted archery skills, well, they were basically arrow shooting by chance, atrocious to behold. But they had sturdy armor, even face masks to protect their faces. This largely immunized them against the enemy's bu mounted archery harassment. And when it came to the exciting close-quarters melee combat, the Han tribe's thick and long lances and sharp long sabers were far more powerful than small bows and arrows. Especially the way these things were used was simple and brutal, requiring no fancy horseback maneuvers at all. As long as you could sit firmly on your horse, hold your weapon steady and charge towards the enemy with a hooray, that was enough. It's no exaggeration to say that as long as the three-piece set of horses, weapons, and armor was sufficient, the Han tribe's cavalry could be rapidly replicated in formations like an assembly line. Because in this simple and brutal tactical mode to be a cavalryman, you only needed to learn one thing: stay on your horse and don't fall off. However, riding a horse was also physically demanding. Without stirrups, if a person wanted to sit steadily on horseback, they had to constantly grip the horse's belly tightly with their two thighs. Gripping for a while was okay, but if you maintained this posture for a long time, the soreness was something only the person doing it would know. It was very tiring. But with stirrups, the situation was completely different. They freed the rider's feet. Not only that, but with a feeling of firm footing under their feet, it was easier for riders to exert force on horseback. They could use heavier weapons. Even when drawing a bow, they could draw stronger bows with higher draw weights. If the saddle and stirrups were the golden finger that allowed the Han tribe's farmers to quickly become cavalrymen, then for the nomadic tribes on the grasslands, this thing was simply a tiger with wings divine artifact. Who wouldn't want it? They wanted it even in their dreams. Before, they couldn't manufacture it themselves, so they could only stare blankly. But now, the opportunity had arrived. The Jian tribe's bronze swords and sabers were indeed trash tier compared to the Han tribe's steel knives. But using this bronze material to make stirrups made no difference. Stirrups were just auxiliary equipment, not weapons used for cutting. People, they just needed to be sturdy regardless of the material. Although Xue was puzzled looking at Modun's gestures, it was just 2 rings. This thing wasn't really that difficult to make. It didn't require much material, probably similar to the scissors the Han tribe sold. Thinking of this, he immediately agreed without hesitation. This thing, no problem. Xue patted his chest to assure him. However many you need, I'll bring them to you next time. But our previous conditions need to be changed. What conditions? Modun immediately became alert, his eyes sharply fixed on Xue. Xue's mental abacus was clicking even faster. He was still hoping to make a pilgrimage to the Han tribe next, so naturally he couldn't take the Han tribe's previous warnings lightly. For example, the Han tribe strictly forbade their Xin tribe from trading deeper into the grasslands and, even more so, prohibited them from selling salt on the grasslands. Even if they were to sell it, the price couldn't be lower than the Han tribes. However, there were countermeasures to policies from above. You don't let me sell? Fine. No problem. I won't sell it. I'll find an agent to sell it for me. That's allowed, right? This way, I wouldn't be violating the Han tribe's rules, and I could still continue selling salt and making money. What's not to like? Of course, Xue wasn't stupid. He wouldn't reveal his true indirect salvation plan. If Modun knew that he was using him as a shield to bear the brunt of the Han tribe's anger, who knew how the kid would react? It's like, "This, Chief Modun," Xue said with an expression of doing it for your own good. "You see, your grasslands are just too vast. Before, when we came to sell salt, we had to travel very, very long distances and promote it door to door to each tribe. If we were lucky, we'd encounter generous chiefs like you. But if we were unlucky and encountered unreasonable tribes, we'd inevitably be robbed. And we might even lose many people, making huge losses. Just now you said you were willing to protect the safety of our caravan. We appreciate the sentiment, but I think it's not very realistic. You can't possibly send a team to follow us around every day, can you? That's impossible. You yourselves have to graze your livestock and live your lives, don't you? So I've come up with an idea. What do you think?" Xue leaned closer and lowered his voice. "From now on, we'll only trade with you, Chief Modun. We'll sell all the salt we bring to your tribe. You, in turn, can use cattle and horses to trade with us. Then, you can take this salt yourself and sell it to other tribes. On the grasslands. As for who you sell it to, at what price, and how much you get in return, we won't interfere at all. We just need to get our due share of cattle and horses. It saves us a lot of trouble. I wonder what Chief Modun thinks of this idea. If you agree, then that circle thing you mentioned, stirrups, we'll only sell to you from now on, exclusive. Supply. Niu Wai's words were impeccable, and Modun's eyes grew brighter and brighter as he listened. These conditions were simply a windfall. The Xin tribe was practically giving him, Modun, the sole agency rights for the entire grassland salt industry. This was a privilege only distributors had. In modern times, the sole agency rights for a popular product in a region wouldn't sell for an astronomical price. Now this Xin tribe was actually giving it away for free, and it was salt, a hard currency. Of course, Modun wasn't interested in doing business and hadn't yet thought of any making a price difference type of commercial operations. Even if he sold the salt to other tribes at the same price the Xin tribe sold it to him, without making a single profit, he would still have to bear the transportation costs and manpower. But he could firmly control the entire grassland's white salt supply. What did this mean? It meant that in the future, other tribes on the grasslands would all have to look to him, Modun, for favor. Want salt? Then they would have to obediently fawn over him and become his underlings. Who dared to disobey? Humph, did they still want salt? Thinking of this, Modun's heart was so excited he almost took off on the spot. However, he wasn't stupid after all. After the initial excitement, he looked at Niu Wai across from him with suspicion. You? Why would you do this? Modun wondered, thinking, wasn't this equivalent to giving away power and benefits that were already in hand? Were the Xin tribe people really this kind? Could there be some kind of trap here? Hey, Chief, you worry too much, Niu Wai explained with an expression of I'm doing it all for your own good. Didn't I just say? First, it takes us too much time to run all over the grasslands selling salt ourselves. Second, it's not safe either. If the goods we worked so hard to transport get robbed even once, the loss would be enough to make us suffer greatly. But if we entrust it to you to sell, it'll be different, Niu Wai continued to coax him. You are a grassland person. Dealing with other tribes is much more convenient and safer for you than for us outsiders. We, on the other hand, can directly sell all the salt to your tribe and get enough cattle and horses in one go to transport back. This way, it's safe, stable, and saves time. The time we used to spend on one trip selling salt across the grasslands might allow us to transport goods to you 3 times in the future. With such a good thing, why wouldn't we do it? Modun nodded upon hearing this, and most of his suspicion was dispelled. Niu Wai's words did sound reasonable. In modern terms, Niu Wai's operation was equivalent to a manufacturer abandoning all retail channels and directly finding a sole distributor to handle wholesale business. In the eyes of modern people, this was simply foolish. Abandoning retail channels was equivalent to giving up maximizing profits, wasn't it? Running your own stores would definitely earn more than doing wholesale. However, given Niu Wai's and the Xin tribe's situation, doing so did have its reasons. Although they were giving up the entire vast grasslands retail market and only sticking to Modun as one major customer, doing so was indeed time-saving, labor-saving, and safe. It could also concentrate the transportation resources that were originally used to travel all over the grasslands for retail sales to be specifically used to deliver goods to Modun. In the same amount of time in the future, they could transport more salt to the grasslands. As for who Modun sold the salt to, at what price, and how much profit he made, what did it have to do with his Xin tribe? As long as he could receive his wholesale payment, cattle and horses on time, that was enough. Of course, all of the above were excuses Niu Wai used to deceive Modun. The most important reason was the Xin tribe had abandoned the grasslands' distribution channels. So in the future, any competition and conflicts arising from selling salt on the grasslands would have nothing to do with their Xin tribe. The grasslands were only so large and there was only so much salt. How Modun competed with the Han tribe in the future? How he fought with the Han tribe over business? That was all Modun's affair. It had nothing to do with his Xin tribe anymore. From now on, the Xin tribe would retreat behind the scenes and peacefully become his supplier and operator. Let the retailers, Modun and the Han tribe, fight tooth and nail in the front. As long as his sole agent, Modun, continued to purchase goods from him, he could sit back and relax without any risk. After a moment of hesitation, Modun finally couldn't resist the temptation of this freebie and readily agreed. As for how to sell the salt after getting it, Modun wasn't worried at all. Just like Xue said, communication among them grassland people was indeed much more convenient than for outsiders like Xue. When the time came, as long as he sent a few people to shout in various tribes, naturally people would drive their cattle and horses and eagerly come to him to exchange for white salt. Thus, in Modun's local tyrant furry tent, a secret agreement that determined the future fate of the Xin tribe, and Modun's tribe was reached silently. The Xin tribe successfully extricated itself and retreated behind the scenes. The young and vigorous Modun, on the other hand, was pushed to the forefront and would soon face the wrath of the Han tribe alone, if the Han tribe found out. As for what the final outcome would be, for the Xin tribe, the impact would be small. Even if Modun was crippled or even wiped out by the Han tribe, Xue could just find another nomadic tribe to cooperate with. The grasslands lacked everything except ambitious and somewhat powerful hotheads, meat shields, and scapegoats like Modun. You Han tribe won't let my Xin tribe sell salt? Fine. Now Modun is selling it. If you have any dissatisfaction or anger, go find him, Modun. It has nothing to do with my Xin tribe, hey. Thinking of this, Xue felt extremely pleased and couldn't help but secretly chuckle. With his mood improved, his appetite naturally followed. In the time that followed, Xue and Modun entered a happy eating mode of you a bite, me a bite. Deep friendship, licking the plate clean. Before long, the plates containing the chili powder that Modun treasured were empty. Meanwhile, in the Han tribe's main camp, you certainly couldn't know that the newly appointed elder of the Xin tribe's merchant group, Xue, had already started using his cunning against you, finding a scapegoat to cause you trouble. You were so busy your feet barely touched the ground. All your thoughts focused on the upcoming decisive battle with the cannibals. The scouts sent out had not yet returned with any news. However, Fuma Pass had undergone a great transformation after days and nights of intense construction. Cartloads of thick wooden planks were transported to the pass and, in the hands of the skilled carpenters under your command, were turned into huge wooden city gates and installed in the two gate openings of the Barbican. However, these city gates were different from ordinary city gates, especially the outermost gate of the Barbican. It actually had two layers. One layer was a conventional gate that opened outward from the inside, and the other layer was lowered from above. This guillotine-style gate that dropped from above was actually suspended from the gate tower by thick ropes. The bottom of the thick gate plank was also inlaid with rows of sharp wooden stakes as thick as bowls. Once the gate fell, with a poochie, a soft thud sound, it would fit snugly into the pre-dug grooves in the ground, completely sealing off the entire gate. Want to ram it open from the outside? No way. This peculiar lifting gate was operated by pulleys and a winch. When lowered, the speed was extremely fast. As soon as the mechanism was triggered, with a quang-dang loud crash sound, the gate would fall instantly. But lifting it up was a lot of effort. Several burly men had to heave and hoe together to turn the winch and slowly pull it. This thing was designed so anti-human that its only purpose was to close the gate with lightning speed after the enemy was lured into the Barbican, completely turning the Barbican into a jar, trapping the enemy inside. In addition to this newly installed deadly gate, two carts carrying strangely shaped large contraptions were carefully transported to the top of the city wall. You had specifically instructed that these were new-style killing weapons, specially used to deal with the cannibalistic giant apes. However, these things were too large and had to be assembled finally after being transported to the top of the wall. And this new-style killing weapon, in your words, was naturally the experimental product you had tinkered with during the winter. The bed crossbow. The previous contraption was just a concept machine without a bowstring. This was mainly because making qualified composite bow arms was too time-consuming and labor-intensive. To equip Fuma Pass with this batch of heavy firepower as soon as possible, you had no choice but to settle for second best, ordering people to quickly produce several slightly larger, single-piece longbows and temporarily install them on the bed crossbow's frame. Although the bed crossbow using a single-piece bow certainly couldn't match the power, range, and elasticity of the genuine product using composite bow arms, with the urgency of the situation, you couldn't worry about so much anymore. Even if it couldn't accurately hit the target, firing a few bolts with a bang-bang sound would at least scare the enemy and boost morale, wouldn't it?